Welcome to Intro to British Parliamentary. Today we'll be going over a quick presentation on the format of BP debate and how to win rounds, and everything you need to know in order to have your first round of British parliamentary debate. In BP, a debate is a defense of arguments for or against a particular topic, which we call a motion, and there are a set of particular rules that you need to follow within British parliamentary debate. For starters, in the format, there are teams of 2 speakers on each team, and there are 4 teams for a total of 8 speakers per debate. Each team gets 15 minutes of preparation, during which there will be no permitted research on the topic beforehand. This includes the use of internet resources, asking other people, and the use of AI are all not allowed during British parliamentary. You have 15 minutes to prepare, and then after which each speaker will give a 5-minute speech plus 15 minutes grace time for a total of 5 minutes and 15 seconds before the judge stops taking notes. So in BP debate, this is the big picture, or the order that the speakers will present their case, starting with the Prime Minister, going to the Leader of Opposition, then the Deputy Prime Minister, and then the Deputy Leader of the Opposition. This is what we call the front half of the debate. So the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister are on opening government, and on opening opposition are the Leader of Opposition and the Deputy Leader of Opposition, and they will go back and forth, and this is called the front half. And then we get to what we call the back half. So on closing government, we have the Member of Government, which speaks 5th. And then on closing opposition, we have the Member of Opposition speaking 6th. And back over to closing government, we have government whip and then opposition whip on closing opposition. So that's 4 teams, 8 speakers. Now we'll briefly cover the roles of the speakers, or what you should be doing during your speech. So for the first speakers of both the government and opposition benches, you should ensure that the debate is adequately defined, which means giving out definitions for particular words in the topic. So for example, you might define this house to be the world or a particular nation that the debate should take place in. The definition should be adequately broad so that you don't squirrel the motion, as in make it so that the motion is so narrow that there's no possible debate to be had. The first speaker on both teams should also advance 1 to 3 arguments in support of the motion. As for the Leader of Opposition, you would also be refuting whatever claims made by the Prime Minister and advance your own arguments in support of the motion. Moving on to the speaker roles of deputies. So for DPM, you would be refuting the Leader of Opposition and then rebuilding your partner's case, which just means providing new analysis as to why your partner is still correct despite whatever refutation that the opposing team gave. You can also, but are not obligated to, advance more new arguments. As for the Leader of Opposition, this is largely the same. You would be refuting the other speaker, rebuilding on your partner, and advancing a new argument if you have the time. Moving on to closing teams. Yeah. So in the role of closing teams, you would be you are on the same side as another team, but you are not trying to have them win. You are also trying to beat them. So you can consider that each side of the debate is like a building tower with blocks, and that arguments and rebuilding makes your tower taller, or refutation knocks down the other team's tower, and the team with the tallest tower at the end wins. So for members, for the member of government or the member of opposition, your goal would be to refute the other half and knock down their tower, and then introduce an extension. So what an extension is new arguments, refutation cases on your bench, so government or opposition, that are either better than what came before, or are different from what came before. And then if they're different, you have to explain why yours matter more than whatever the team before you gave. So extensions are new content, new arguments, explanations, or better analysis of existing arguments. So the common question when you begin BP debate is what happens if opening takes my extension and I'm left with no content? This is something that happens to everyone, and that's okay. And how you avoid this is instead of running one case and having really deep analysis only for that to be taken by your opening, try to brainstorm different things or try to make it so and try to pivot your case in a way that allows you to be distinct and different from your opening. Moving on to the last speakers within the round, which are the government and opposition whips. The whip speech is what we call a summary speech, which is just explaining why that your team is winning. You're not allowed to present new arguments, but you can provide additional analysis on arguments that your partner has already given. So any new arguments would not be counted by the judges within the round. And to explain why your team is winning, you would refute the other side. In the tower analogy, knocking down their tower, rebuilding your own tower by analyzing what your partner has brought, and then explaining why overall, between all four teams, why your team has the best arguments or has the most important arguments, and just pointing out why it is that your tower stands above your opponent's tower. Another piece of BP debate are points of information. These are 15-second formal interjections made between the first and last, that should say 30 seconds of a speech if you're giving 5-minute speeches. So a speaker on a different team or on a different bench would raise their hand, and if the speaker accepts their POI, they can ask a question. So common POIs include why is X argument true given Y reason, or here's a context that you forgot in which these factors exist that makes your argument less true. So for POIs, it's important to remember that the time belongs to the speaker. As the speaker, you can choose when to take a POI or to not take one at all and to wave things down. But it is important for engagement, as in you should be engaging with what the other team has said. So the common rule of POIs is to give one POI and take one POI. So how do you win a round of BP debate? Because each of the four teams are trying to prove that their side is right, and the team that does the best job wins the debate. So there are two axes that you can think of in how to prove and how to prove your side is right. So arguments can be true or they can be important, and your job is to have the argument that is both true and important, and that would be doing the best job of proving your side. So sometimes you would prove something that might be true but like not very important. So things like for example, something true but might not be very important. It's like, oh, there are 5 chairs within this room, which is like empirically, objectively true, but probably not very important within the round. And if you think about it on 2 axes, like an X and Y axis, you're trying to create the square with the largest area. So something that's very important, something that's very true, but not very important, it's like a vertical line, which does not give you a very big area. And the opposite of this is something that's very important, but not very true, or you did not do an adequate job of proving that it's true. And this would be like a horizontal line, which will also not give you very much area. So things like, oh, if kids do homework, they will explode. Like this is very important. We don't want kids to die, but this is like obviously just not true. So when crafting your arguments, make sure to consider both how you're proving them and the analysis that you're doing, which furthers your truth axis, and then how or why this argument is so important, or the most important within the round, which furthers your importance axis in order for you to get the biggest square possible and then win the debate. So motions in British Parliament all start with this house. It's not any house in particular, it just refers to society at large, unless the motion otherwise specifies. So some motions will specify a particular actor, like a social movement, a particular individual, or a particular government. If nothing is specified, this just refers to the worldwide society. So, for example, this house supports the rise of TikTok. Because nothing is specified, this house just means society in general supports the rise of TikTok, and you should defend whether TikTok is good for society in general or not, depending on which side of the debate you're on. So, I hope that was helpful. Yeah, if you have any questions, I guess you could reach out to the Hart House outreach emails and have fun debating.